Hi, everyone. I'm here today with the amazing Veev. Veev is my helper. If you've been in any of my classes in the last couple of years, you may know Veev because they are an awesome teacher. I guess like my assistant, or like, I don't know if you're comfortable with that word, Veev. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you want to
Teacher's
introduce?
assistant works.
What's that?
Teacher's assistant works.
Okay, cool. My rider, my tarot rider died. That's what I've called you on the Discord. So anyway, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Veev. I'm a white queer person currently living on Coast Salish lands here in Tillicum, Washington. I am a caregiver, licensed professional caregiver in my day-to-day life, and I've also been reading tarot since 2013. I have read mostly for myself through that time most consistently. I also consider myself to be a tarot student, a tarot theorist, if you will. I really like to spend time thinking about tarot and how it connects to concepts that are important in my life, especially, um, you know, personal mythology, understanding of the self through a societal lens. I studied international politics and sociology in school. And so I like to connect anything at my individual level to the larger collective consciousness and subconsciousness. So that always leads into my tarot work.
Awesome. So I invited you on because you are brilliant and you share a lot of like amazing stuff in the Discord communities, both for the Rise of Good Witch podcast and also for Tarot School for Liberation. And yeah, I really wanted you to come on and like be an occasional co-host for these tarot talks because I appreciate your insight. So the patrons last month voted on, and I need to like pull the card for this month, by the way. The patrons, they voted on 8 of Cups. I pulled 4 cards, 8 of Cups came up. And the magical thing is 8 of Cups was one of the cards that I was really thinking about doing. It always works out like that. Tarot's magical like that. It does things that you can't really explain with science. But that said, patrons voted on 8 of Cups. So, what are your feelings and thoughts about 8 of Cups? How does that feel to you, especially from this, you said international studies sociology, right? Yeah. So from that perspective, and yeah.
I love that you were kind of hoping for that to be the card that was picked, and then everyone met you in that hope. And I think that that speaks to the fact that we're all probably navigating very similar feelings, especially as you work to cultivate your community, as you work to like better understand your patrons and try to show up for what they want to learn about with tarot and things like that. Of course, everyone is in 8 of Cups right now. We're in, rolling in the third year of the pandemic. We are trying to figure out ourselves and leaning into spirituality, connecting to tools and resources that have often been stigmatized, including tarot, right? So for the 8 of Cups to have been what was chosen, I was like, oh yeah, I feel like everyone is moving through some grief, some probably some feelings of not knowing what the path ahead of us looks like, but also holding on to some hope too at the same time. I know at least in my friend groups, whenever we're talking to one another, it's always like, wow, shit's hard right now, but I actually have a lot of hope for the ways that we are more deeply connecting with one another, figuring each other out, figuring ourselves out, and like using that to connect with the world at large in a way that I don't think society has allowed us to, at least in my 30 years of like existence, right? So yeah, I'm glad that we're gonna be able to talk about it.
Yeah, me too. And it's funny because 8 of Cups has always been a card that has meant a lot to me. And definitely when I started Rise Up Good Witch, I mean, I started it in 2017. And at that point in time, I had no intention of turning it into full-time work, at least for a few years, because I was finishing grad school. I had my heart set on working in public health research. And then I kind of like had a series of awakenings where I was like, I don't think that I'm really designed for 9 to 5 work. I don't really think I'm designed for like institutional work. And yet there I was with all this student loan debt. And then I was like, I want to make this happen. Like there's been years that I wanted to be a professional tarot reader. I even remember like 2014, like right before I started my degree in anthropology, going on this hike with a friend, and we were looking out over this forest. We went to this, there's a really cute hiking place in Humboldt County called Strawberry Rock. Some people listening to this are going to know what I'm talking about. And you scale this, it's a walk through a forest, and then you scale this rock at the end, and you get to this point where you can see just like probably miles of forest and ocean in every direction, not ocean in every direction, clearly. And I was sitting there, and my friend was like, Karina, do you really want to go to grad school? Like, do you really want to, or do you just think that you have to? And I was like, kind of defensive. I was like, no, I mean, I want to write, and I want to be so like, how do I write? I'm not going to like just get a job writing. So I think I need to do research so I can write. And my friend was like, well, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I was like, without just like not skipping a beat, I was like, I'd be a tarot reader who also had like a medicinal herb garden, and I would make formulas also based on like astrological stuff and tarot cards. And my friend was like, well, why don't you just do that? And I'm like, how? I don't have money. Like, I don't know how to promote myself. And I had tried before that to promote myself. So when I got to that moment, I had this really strong feeling of like, this is the time, and you're going to have to take the risk, and you're probably going to get into more debt, which I did. But this is your moment. And if you want to live this fulfilling life, if you want to have a life where, you know, you feel fulfilled, because I've never, ever been happy in a 9 to 5 job. I've always felt very, very depressed, and that I had to be self-destructive for myself to kind of like release the overstimulation and the tension of the stressful jobs that I worked. So I'm kind of going off, but that's what I do. You know that, Veev. But yeah, that was the moment the Eight of Cups came through to me. I was like, what if I studied and I worked hard and I have all these skills, and I spent, you know, nearly 20 years in the workforce building up all these skills, and I just trashed it and threw it away for what I really wanted to do. And to me, in that moment, it was very Eight of Cups, because it was a risk that no one in my life understood or supported really. And I had to go internally and trust my path and my intuition. And it thus far has worked out.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on making that step and trusting yourself enough with that. I love that you mentioned that it was an act of intuition, and like that brought you on this Eight of Cups path, because especially in the Coleman Smith rendition of the Eight of Cups, we have that big full moon in this clear sky, right? And to me, whenever we see the moon, it really connects to instinct, intuition, these like gut feelings that we can't necessarily explain, but they're coming from somewhere beyond our conscious level thinking, whether that's ancestral guidance or maybe a memory or a pattern that you have forgotten that you used to live through. If you believe in like past lives and things like that, maybe it's a lesson that's coming through that you've learned in a different incarnation. And I love that the moon is full, and just watching this figure walk on their path in this clear sky. There's no other stars or anything to guide. It's just intuition. So I really love that you felt that it was intuitive for you to make the change from the 9 to 5 to heading into Rise Up Good Witch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I love what you share, you know, about that path of the moon and the intuition, because I think something that people get wrong a lot with tarot, well, I don't want to tell people what's right or wrong, but it's contrary to my belief system that the cups are just about romantic love, you know? And we've talked a lot about that. And we talk about that in Tarot School for Liberation, that swords is pain, wands is ambition, cups is romance, pentacles is career, you know? And when we think about what cups are, they are about our emotional wellness, our ability to feel our feelings, our intuition, and our trauma healing journeys. So I'm curious, because, you know, you brought up the ancestral piece. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, you know, I've never thought of those 8 cups on the shore as being the ancestors. that maybe tried to do the things that we do in this lifetime and are rooting us on or cheering us on, because they're watching us live their dreams. And I know you've talked a lot about, your research and work around, anti-racist, white ancestral connection and ritual. So I was wondering if you wanted to share a little about that, and like if you have a way to apply that to the Eight of Cups.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking about that. Part of the way that I was thinking about the Eight of Cups and um, the idea of time is both past and future for me in the Eight of Cups, and that's influenced by the star. And I want to talk about that a little bit later. But one thing that I wrote down while I was really sitting with the Eight of Cups is, where did these eight cups come from? Were they inherited? Did someone gift these cups to the figure who's now leaving them behind? And when we think about there being eight cups, but there's only one figure in the image, I really wonder, like, who were all eight of these cups serving? Were they all for this one person? And how did they collect them? Did they make them? Like I said, were they inherited? And for me, within my own personal healing, in terms of, if we think about the cup suit as trauma healing, right? A lot of my work with the tarot revolves around the failings of the nuclear family unit, especially in white so-called America, right? There's a lot of wounds that I feel I was born into in my family line that I want to take responsibility for, and that I want to be ready to integrate if they need to be integrated and release them if they need to be released. And especially as a queer person, as a non-binary person, as an asexual person, a lot of those things really come together to help me understand that the relationship building, the bond building, the procreative side of white family ties, like, a lot of that stuff is really harmful and really just murky to trudge through and try to figure out, what an emotional bond means when you grow up in an emotionally stunted family, when like you're basically crafted to be this being that only talks in small talk, that only relates to one another through wanting to share your own perspective. What are these eight cups serving? Was it a big family dinner, or was it actually just, yeah, I'm still working on that, obviously, but it's a card that I feel can invite us to ask, is the figure leaving them behind because all the mouths that drank from those cups are like no longer safe to be around? Or are they moving toward community because all that's left is the cups? These are some questions that I like to reflect on when I pull this card.
I love that. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It makes me think about, like you said, like coming from an emotionally stunted family, or, or I should say, a family with a long line of trauma that they chose not to heal because they chose to invalidate themselves. And that's like something I'm going through, is I think like, and something I see reflected in like millennials and even more so in Gen Z. And we were kind of talking about Gen Z on TikTok before we started recording, and how, I don't know if you've read about this, but Gen Z is the quality in like some research that was done, the quality that Gen Z most looks for in a partner is if they go to therapy. Like, how different is that to baby boomers? I feel like baby boomers,
Yeah.
like, I look for someone that stuffs all their emotions down to get through life and buy a house. Not that it was hard for them to buy a house, but yeah. So I know that you identify as a budding anarchist. Love that. Um, how do you feel? Because like, I think like, I shared in the beginning this like perspective that I held with the Eight of Cups as this like taking a risk, for something better. And that's often when I do readings and I see an Eight of Cups, it depends what other cards are in the spread. So, and like what the guides are telling me and what's coming through. But I feel like, there's something about the Eight of Cups that's like, you need to take this risk and you might not get to the top of the mountain. But the act of trying is the most potent. And for me, like now in the last couple of years, because I have struggled internally with my anarchist perspective for so many years before finally embracing it, because I kind of talked myself out, like, how would that ever happen? Like, what's the point? And as I've gotten older, I'm like, well, it's not about what the point is. It's about the work and the trying and trying to find that kernel of hope when we know that our government won't support us. And I actually want to share, this is a good moment for me to share these memes. And, I shared this quite a while ago. I might have to pause this because I'm like, oh, there it is. Okay. So the memes I made are comparing the Eight of Pentacles with the Eight of Cups. And the Eight of Pentacles says, capitalism means the working class depends on a job market that helps the 1% get richer and maintains intergenerational poverty. Eight of Cups. Anarchism means we detach from all internal and external systems of hierarchy, paternalism, and we can take care of us. So yeah, and I'll share the other one after you share because I want to give you a chance. But yeah, I'm curious, like, as you're on your like anarchist journey, how the Eight of Cups has shown up for you, if it has at all.
Hmm. Yeah. I identify as a budding anarchist just because, I'm hesitant to claim any title, honestly. But I will say that growing up incredibly poor in a family that was raised by a single mom, I was really confronted with a lot of the ways that white supremacy and that the government really fails people at an individual level. I think that the Eight of Cups invites us to recognize that what's being built is actually incompletable. Like when you look at the imagery on the Eight of Cups in the Coleman Smith version, it looks like someone's been trying to build a pyramid with these cups, and there is just no possible way to build a pyramid with 8 cups. You regard, like, depending on the number that you have at the bottom, and in this particular depiction there's 5, you're never going to complete that pyramid with just 8 cups, and just 8 cups is all you have. So recognizing the limitations of your resources, emotional or otherwise, I think is one way that I started to radicalize, because wanting to be a cog in the machine of democracy when that democracy is largely failing people, regardless of how much work each individual person puts in, I wanted to focus smaller. There's no amount of grand work that I myself, Veev, can be doing that will ripple out any farther than like my tight knit community. So understanding that it's not about changing, I cannot personally change the systems that are already in existence. But what I can do is I can show up for community, I can show up for friends and comrades and people that I want to build affinity with. I have to recognize though, through the Eight of Cups and through strength, really, Major Arcana 8 in my framework, I have to recognize where I'm not capable. And I'm not capable of like showing up and writing a speech about democracy and like, trying to be a good patriot or whatever the heck, right? And I was really taught that through caregiving, through being a professional caregiver, recognizing the failings of government and the ways in which so many folks are pushed to the wayside in favor of the majority, or in favor of the folks that maybe don't need as much support and things like that. So the combo of like being super poor, growing up in like a failed family, being touched by caregiving, and just trying to show up for folks. Yeah, it really shows you that you have to do what you can with what you have, but you have to not pretend you have more than you do, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you're kind of bringing in this like disability justice framework when you're talking about the Eight of Cups, because, yeah, the government does fail people with different abilities. I know, yeah, like disabled folks, like the government really, did I say favors?
No, you said failed. You
Okay,
failed.
cool.
You're
I was
good.
just like, sometimes I use the wrong words. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, obviously, and really like these pandemic times have done nothing but prove that to us, you know? And
Mhm.
yet we also see how many people also don't care about disabled people. And, you know, whether that be like physical disabilities that are very visible, or chronic health issues, mental health issues, trauma, you know, can be very disabling or can limit ability or make fluctuating abilities in the body and the mind. And the pandemic really showed us that. I think the pandemic has revealed, and I think, you know, we were just talking about, I spend a lot of time now, I'm like way more into TikTok. And there's a lot of leftist accounts that are like Gen Zers. And I've been noticing lately they're saying like they were Democrats in 2020. And now they're, you know, Marxists or anarchists or communists or whatever. They're like to the left, you know, to the left of everything that we see in our current society. And I think that's becoming a thing. You know, I think like more and more people are just losing trust and faith in the government. Um, and, you know, as I tell my moderate liberal mom, who is like, I wish that you believed in the Democratic Party. And I'm like, if they would do good things, I would believe in them. But I've spent my whole adult life trying. I mean, not my whole adult life, I've given up for a while, but I spent a lot of my adult life trying to believe in democracy, trying. And it just, you can only, it's almost like a heartbreak, I think. It's like a heartbreak. You're like, come on, Supreme Court, do the right thing. Come on, cancel student loans, you know? And then they don't do it, and you're like, why did I bring myself up just to let myself down? So what I appreciate about anarchism that I think a lot of people don't understand, because a lot of people, you know, still associate anarchism and Antifa as being these like violent movements. And the reality is that all the anarchists I know are incredibly educated, incredibly smart, and they understand that it's just about focusing on communities instead of government, because we have had to recognize that the government is failing so many people, disabled folks, working class and houseless folks, folks living with addiction, BIPOC, trans folks, you know, queer folks, sex workers, all of these people. And to a degree, I think like middle class white people are getting failed. You know, I think a lot of people are being failed by the system. And people are starting to recognize that we have to take things into our own hands. So actually, I'm going to share the other meme, because that
Okay.
like totally goes with like, you know, what I'm sharing. So this new meme I made, I'll show it. You probably won't be able to. Nope, you can't see, can you? Nope, you can't see.
Oh, not
So this
quite.
one is the Eight of Wands with the Eight of Cups, and the Eight of Wands says waiting to see if Democrats cancel student loans, regulate water usage and Airbnb, fund affordable health care, and create rehabilitation pathways for incarcerated folks. Eight of Cups is accepting that the government will never care about anything but the economy, and learning to organize our communities and heal our own wounding.
Mm, yeah. Ooh, I'm excited. That one's new to me, so I'm gonna sit with that one. I hope you post it to the Discord.
I
Um,
will.
yeah. A lot of things that I reflect on largely is like the social contract, like what does it mean to be in society with one another? Why are we diverting power to structures instead of to one another? Why are we so ready to accept a title or a position that holds authority over us instead of like claiming our autonomy? And I can see that in the in the figure in the Eight of Cups walking away from all of these cups, right? What are they walking away from and what are they walking toward? Was the community that was drinking out of these cups unsustainable? Was it actually harming them? Was it built on false morals and empty promises? And they go off to seek real community, or they go off to find themselves so that they can come back and find real community? What are they walking away from? Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Okay. And that reminds me, that makes me think about like, I've always thought, or I think like before, that the eight cups you walk away from are your community and your family. You know, if you have a healthy family or whatever family means to you, and you're walking away to like achieve something bigger, but you can always go back. But then also there's this idea, you know, of like recognizing you come from a toxic family structure and that continuing to be in that structure, unfortunately, means that there are parts of you that will not be able to heal. So that kind of, I don't know if that's what you meant, but that kind of came up when you said that.
Mm, yeah. It's hard not to notice what's missing when you're in the middle of building something and it's just not coming together. Yeah, it's hard to see anything but that gap in the cups and the next tier that didn't get added. Yeah, and it's hard to make those choices, to recognize your limitations, your capacities, what you're good at, what you can offer, what you can't offer. Those are all hard questions to ask yourself and be confronted with. And that's where I think that strength as an ally card to the Eight of Cups comes in, because it shows that regardless of resources and tools that can be added to a situation, your inherent gifts and your inherent skills and even your inherent limitations show you where you can and cannot put your energy. So depending on the depiction of strength, of course, some decks take more of like a lion tamer kind of approach to it. But speaking specifically to the Coleman Smith rendition, where this figure is barehandedly, petting or interacting with this beast, we have to know that there are many ways to embody our strengths. And in the Eight of Cups, we see this figure really, I feel, taking the reins in their own autonomy and being like, I gotta go. Even though we're building, even though there's excess here, I can't stay. Yeah.
Mm, yes. And I would love to hear if you feel called to share, you know, some of those thoughts that you mentioned that you're having regarding the star.
Yeah. So the star, to me, I love the star, and that's probably because I have quite a bit of Aquarius placements in my chart. Um, but I really like to think about how the star, the figure in the star, is holding these jugs of water, and there's really no um, structure or like society in the star. It's kind of a wilderness plain, and the figure is nude and it's nighttime. So we can think of, if we were embodying this person in this card, how might we feel being nude in the middle of nowhere with no resources
Mm,
and it's nighttime? We might feel very vulnerable, right? Or that we might, especially if we have trauma around resourcing, we might tiptoe into scarcity mindset where we're like, I don't have what I need to survive right now. And yet the figure in the star is not pouring themselves a cup of water. They're not trying to drink the water themselves so that they can be sustained. Instead, they pour it directly into the earth. And to me, that's an offering to and an honoring of futurity, of the future existing. The, the figure in the star is offering unto the earth so that life can continue forward and onward. And I know in the Discord, I had mentioned a little phrase that I was really proud of. And I said that the future is not just a moment away, future is infinite, right? And I think that the star really speaks to that. So when we look at the Eight of Cups, numerologically associated with 17, the star, what future is the figure headed toward? And by doing this work of maybe declining the cups and the sustenance that the cups could have afforded them, what kind of future are they building instead?
Mm. Wow, there was so much there. Yeah. Yeah. And that, that really plays into this, like, in the pandemic, the Eight of Cups to me feels like, yeah, like we're dealing with massive, many issues that are incredibly difficult. Like, one of the things that frustrates me about people that, like really try to like promote the Democratic Party is this idea of like, well, just vote in representatives that'll make good laws. And I'm like, there are incarcerated people, there are millions of incarcerated people. So when you say that, there are millions of sick people that don't have health care. There are millions of houseless people. And when you say, let's wait and vote somebody in, you're basically like, those people can continue to suffer until we get someone who won't even do anything anyway, will just protect corporate interests. So I think, like, yeah, with the Eight of Cups, it's like, yeah, we're dealing with the fact that we will probably run out of all drinking water in 18 years. Um, in 18 years, we're going to be seeing a large amount of land being unlivable because of climate change. And this is happening much more rapidly, even than scientists thought. And all of these things are happening. And yet, where is that hope? What if we can rebuild a healthy society? What if we can, like, awaken white folks to the reality of the way that we benefit from white supremacy so they won't continue to defend it and hold tight to it, all of these things. Like, that is, to me, the Eight of Cups is like, we need that kernel of hope. How can we survive without some hope that we will be able to sustain ourselves and live a whole life, like, in the way the world is collapsing? And with the star, I love your interpretation and the vulnerability in it. And I always think about reciprocity with, like, the pitcher that pours water into the pond and the pitcher of water that pours water onto the ground. It's like we must, and I think about that with like flower essences, plant medicine, you know, all of our ancestors regarding, despite wherever they're from, were, we're not, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for every ancestor, but I feel like every part of the world, it contained people that were believed in tending to the land, believed in having relationship to the land. And that is so lost in this so-called country. We are so disconnected from that. And this idea of reciprocity and like giving back to the land, like when I make flower essences, and I really, well, I did this before, but it was really fortified when I took Liz from Sister Spinster's flower essence class, Turning Towards the Flower, about like, you offer that flower water. I mean, sometimes we pick those flowers. I hate seeing on Instagram those bowls of like tons and tons of flowers. I'm like, a flower essence, you don't even need to pick any flowers to make a effective flower essence. It's the intention there. And you always give some of the water back to the plant, because we don't extract from this earth without a, intention and acknowledgement, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I there's no way there is no way to take without also giving an energy back, and whether that energy is like malignant or benevolent, right? Like the energy is there regardless. And while you were talking, I was just reminded that for me personally in my life, I try to consider hope as an active process that I'm participating in. If I'm feeling, I mean, I can definitely get stuck in like nihilism and like nothing's worth it and like everything is crumbling anyway, so why try? But for me, hope is an active process. Otherwise, it's just ignorance or deflection, right? If we hope that someone else will be doing something, not to always take it back to autonomy and agency, but we're giving up the the opportunity that we have to affect change, and not always just change, but to affect action, to affect a movement of some kind. Yeah, and I see that in the star. I don't think that hope is waiting for the earth to be filled with water. I think hope is the act of that figure pouring those cups out, or excuse me, those like vases out, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything more that you want to share about the Eight of Cups or, tarot or
Mm.
whatever?
I don't think so. Yeah, no, I think that you asked me some great questions that got me to everywhere that I wanted to be and everything I wanted to cover. So, yeah, I'm feeling really good about what we shared so far.
Awesome. And we had some other people sharing on the Discord, and I think I'm gonna share those, after this interview or before the interview. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you so much, Veev. You're awesome. It's great to collaborate with you. And folks that are listening, if you join Tarot School for Liberation, you get to meet Veev and get their amazing feedback and join our monthly tarot chats where we practice readings and help each other interpret them. So thank you so much, Veev, for being my co-collaborator and friend and supporter for so long.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was great to talk with you about the Eight of Cups.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.